My name is Jenna Prescott, and at 28, my own father toasted me in front of Boston's elite as the family's resident failure. The polite laughter of 100 wealthy guests felt like a physical blow, a public dismissal of my entire life. They saw me as a passion project that would never pay the bills. But in that moment, as I caught my father's nervous glance at a notorious art dealer, I realized their gilded world was a facade, and my useless passion was the only thing that could burn it all down. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to prove your own family wrong. Trust me, you're gonna want to hear what happened next. The Boston Museum of Fine Arts glittered like a chandelier, all crystal flutes and silk gowns, the air thick with perfume and pretense. I stood in the grand hall, my self-stitched dress, emerald green with a neckline I'd spent weeks perfecting, feeling like a bruise against the sea of Chanel and Dior. I'd made it myself, every seam a quiet rebellion against the Prescott name, my family's name, the one that hung over this gala like a golden noose. I caught my reflection in a gilded mirror. My dark hair was swept up, but a few strands had escaped, curling defiantly at my neck. My sister Bea glided over, her blonde bob flawless, her smile sharp as a paper cut. "Jenna, that dress is so eclectic," she said, her voice syrupy. "Maybe next time I can lend you something, to fit in." I forced a smile. "I'm good, Bea, thanks." My mother joined us, her eyes scanning me like a barcode. "Darling, there's a thread loose on your shoulder," she murmured, brushing at it as if it were a moral failing. I stood still, letting her fuss, my chest tight. This was their world, perfect, polished, suffocating. I'd never belonged here, not really. The crowd parted for my father, William Prescott, as he took the stage for his keynote. He was all charisma, his silver hair catching the light, his voice warm as whiskey. The Prescott Foundation Gala was his stage, and we were his props. He raised his glass, toasting my brother Theo for his razor-sharp business mind, then Bea for her legal brilliance. The room clapped, dazzled. Then he turned to me. "And to my Jenna," he said, pausing, his smile tightening, "who reminds us all there's beauty in passion projects. May she one day find one that pays the bills." The room laughed, a polite, knowing chuckle that sliced through me. I stood frozen, my face burning, the weight of 100 eyes pinning me in place. It wasn't just a joke, it was a dismissal, a public carving of my place in the family, the artistic outcast, the failure. I locked eyes with him, searching for a crack in his facade. For a second I thought I saw one, a flicker of unease as he glanced at a man in the crowd. Adrian Thorne, an art dealer with a shark's smile and a reputation for moving masterpieces. Their exchange was brief, a tense warning look, gone so fast I might have imagined it. But it lodged in my gut, sharp and cold. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Something icy settled over me like frost on a window pane. I set my untouched champagne flute on a passing tray, gave my family a curt nod and walked out. The clink of glasses and murmur of voices faded behind me. I was done with their gilded cage, done with being their punchline. Philadelphia smelled like history and asphalt, a far cry from Boston's polished veneer. I'd used every penny of my savings to rent a loft in an old industrial district, all exposed brick and creaking pipes. It was gritty, small but mine. For the first time, I could breathe. I turned the space into a sanctuary and studio, my hands always busy. Mornings were for cleaning centuries-old canvases, my brush coaxing life back into faded landscapes. Afternoons I'd restretch frames, the wood groaning under my grip. The scent of turpentine and oil paint clung to my skin, a badge of freedom. I was poor, ramen for dinner, poor, but I was happy. My life was my own, shaped by my hands, not my family's expectations. At night, though, the ghosts crept in. I'd scroll through my phone, unable to stop myself. Photos of my family at political fundraisers, their smiles perfect, their lives a curated lie. Bea in a power suit, Theo shaking hands with senators, my parents radiant at some charity ball. They looked like they'd never noticed I was gone. It hurt more than I'd admit, a dull ache in my chest. I threw myself into work, landing a small restoration job for a local gallery. My careful touch, hours spent matching pigments, steadying my breath, earned me a nod from the curator. "You've got a gift, Jenna," she said. It was the first time in years someone had seen me, really seen me. I carried her words like a talisman. Then came the break-in. I came home one evening, the streetlights buzzing, and found my studio door ajar, the lock splintered. My heart lurched. Inside, nothing was stolen, but my tools were scattered, canvases shifted, like someone had been searching for something specific. I stood in the middle of my sanctuary, my hands shaking, feeling violated. It wasn't random. It was a message. I didn't call the police. I didn't know who to trust. I swept up the mess, bolted the door, and sat in the dark, my pulse loud in my ears. Philadelphia was supposed to be my fresh start, but the past had followed me, its shadow long and cold. A month later, an offer came through a lawyer, anonymous and too good to refuse. A 19th-century landscape painting, heavily damaged, needed restoration. The payout would cover my rent for a year. I hesitated, but the weight of my empty bank account won. The painting arrived by secure courier, wrapped in black cloth, no questions asked. I set it on my easel, the canvas sagging under layers of grime and cracked paint. It was a mess, the kind of challenge I lived for. I lost myself in the work, my world narrowing to the scrape of my scalpel, the hum of my infrared reflectography machine, a tool my father once called useless. Hours bled into days, the loft filled with the sharp tang of solvents. The damage wasn't natural. It was deliberate, like someone had scrubbed the surface to hide something. Under the infrared I found it, not just an underdrawing but a different signature, faint but clear, and the ghostly outline of another painting. My breath caught. This wasn't a restoration job, it was a forgery, a masterful one, painted over a genuine but lesser-known work to pass as something priceless. I sat back, my heart racing, the pieces clicking together. This wasn't random. The money, the secrecy, the break-in, they were connected. I started documenting everything, snapping photos, scribbling notes. But the world outside my loft was closing in. A black sedan lingered across the street, its tinted windows like unblinking eyes. My unlisted work phone rang once, a wrong number, with nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. I stopped sleeping, my nerves frayed, every creak in the building a threat. I was alone, cornered, my sanctuary no longer safe. But the painting, it was a key, a secret someone wanted buried, and I was the only one who could unlock it. For the first time, I wasn't just running from my family's shadow, I was chasing it. The black sedan was there again, parked under a flickering streetlight across from my loft. I watched it through the crack in my blinds, my pulse a drumbeat in my throat. The painting sat on my easel, its secret exposed under the infrared's cold light, a forged masterpiece hiding a modest original. It was no accident I'd been chosen for this job. Someone had underestimated me, and now they were watching, waiting for me to make a move. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The phone calls kept coming, silent, heavy breathing, always from a blocked number. My loft, once my sanctuary, felt like a trap. But I wasn't running, not this time. If the Prescotts thought they could scare me into silence, they'd forgotten who I was. I started digging, my laptop glowing in the dark as I scoured academic databases and art auction records. The real painting, the one buried under the forgery, was a landscape by a minor 19th-century artist, last sold at a small Boston gallery in the 90s. The gallery was defunct now, its name barely a footnote. But when I cross-referenced its sponsors, my stomach dropped. The Prescott Foundation. My family's fingerprints were all over it. I kept going, piecing together fragments like a shattered canvas. A digital archive from a local Boston paper showed a photo from the gallery's final exhibition. There was my father, younger but unmistakable, his arm around Adrian Thorne, the art dealer from the gala. They were smiling, but their eyes were sharp, predatory. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a scheme, one my family had built their empire on. The realization hit like a wave. The Prescott Foundation was a front. They'd been buying authentic but unremarkable paintings, commissioning forgeries of masterpieces to layer over them, then donating the fakes to museums for massive tax write-offs. The real masterpieces? Sold on the black market through Thorne's network. It was brilliant, disgusting, and airtight, until I came along. My useless art knowledge, the passion my father mocked, was the one thing that could tear it all down. I should have been terrified, but something else was growing inside me. A scholar's determination, cold and precise. I printed out the photo, pinned it to my wall next to the infrared scans. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every artist whose work had been erased, every truth buried under my family's lies. I was done being their outcast. I was their reckoning. I flew to Boston on a red-eye, my evidence tucked in a battered messenger bag. I needed answers, and I needed them from the only people who might still care, Bea and Theo. The city felt like a vice, its skyscrapers closing in as I stepped into Bea's office, a sterile glass box overlooking the harbor. She sat behind her desk, immaculate in a navy suit, her eyes narrowing as I walked in. Theo stood by the window, his tie loosened, his face a mask of exhaustion. "Jenna," Bea said, her voice smooth as ice, "this is a surprise. You look tired." I didn't bother with pleasantries. I laid out the infrared scans, the auction records, the photo of our father with Thorne. "This is what the Prescott Foundation really does," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Forgeries, tax fraud, black market deals. And you both know about it." Bea didn't flinch. She leaned back, her fingers steepled. "You're overwrought, Jenna, imagining things. This is what happens when you spend too much time in that little studio of yours, chasing fantasies." Her tone was patronizing, but her eyes were hard, calculating. "Do you know what accusations like this could do to our family? To you?" I turned to Theo, my chest aching. He'd been my ally once, the one who'd sneak me extra paintbrushes when our parents disapproved. "Theo, please," I said, my voice breaking. "Tell me you're not part of this." He looked at me, his eyes shadowed with something like regret, but he didn't move, didn't speak. Finally he whispered, "Jenna, you don't understand what's at stake. Some foundations are best left unshaken." He turned away, staring out at the harbor, and I felt the last thread of hope snap. I left, my bag slung over my shoulder, my heart a hollow drum. They'd chosen the dynasty over me. I was alone, more than I'd ever been. That night, back in Philadelphia, my phone buzzed with an encrypted text from an unknown number. It was a photo of me asleep in my loft taken through my window. The caption read, "Art is about knowing what to leave unseen." I sank to the floor, my breath ragged, the walls closing in. I'd hit rock bottom, my family's betrayal a blade in my chest. They weren't just ignoring me, they were hunting me, and I had nowhere left to run. I sat in the dark, the photo still burning on my phone screen. Fear clawed at me, but something else was rising too, a cold, furious resolve. They thought they could break me, scare me into silence. They were wrong. I wasn't their outcast anymore. I was their enemy. I reached out to Dr. Evelyn Harper, my old art history mentor, a woman who'd always despised the art world's corruption. We met in a dive bar, the kind of place my family would never step foot in. Her gray hair was pulled back, her eyes sharp as she listened to my story. "You're sure about this?" she asked, glancing at the infrared scans. I nodded. She leaned forward, her voice low. "Then let's burn their house down." We brought in Sam, an investigative journalist with a reputation for taking down giants. He was young, hungry, his notebook already half filled with leads. "This is big, Jenna," he said, his voice buzzing with excitement. "But we can't just accuse them. We need a stage they can't control." Evelyn had the answer: the Global Art and Legacy Summit, the most prestigious conference in the art world. My father was being honored there with a Lifetime Achievement Award. It was perfect. His moment of glory would be his undoing. Evelyn pulled strings to get me on a panel, a last-minute addition. I'd have the microphone, the audience, the truth. We worked in secret, building a dossier that could withstand any scrutiny. I cross-referenced the Foundation's acquisitions with Thorne's shell corporations, my fingers flying over my laptop. Sam dug into financial records, unearthing a web of offshore accounts. Evelyn analyzed the forgery's techniques, her expertise giving our evidence weight. I built a digital presentation, every slide a nail in the Prescott coffin, infrared images, financial trails, a map of their criminal empire. It wasn't enough to expose them. I had to make it undeniable, a takedown so elegant they'd never see it coming. I practiced my speech in the mirror, my voice steady, my fear buried under fury. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every artist whose work had been stolen, every truth my family had buried. This was my masterpiece, and I'd paint it in their blood. The auditorium at the Global Art and Legacy Summit buzzed with anticipation, a sea of tailored suits and sparkling jewels under the glow of chandeliers. I stood backstage, my hands clammy, my heart pounding like a war drum. My laptop was hooked to the projector, my presentation ready, a digital guillotine for the Prescott empire. My father had just finished his acceptance speech, his voice ringing with talk of integrity and the purity of art. The applause was deafening, 1,000 hands celebrating a lie. I smoothed my dress. Simple, black, nothing like the Emerald Rebellion of the gala years ago. I wasn't here to stand out. I was here to end this. Evelyn squeezed my shoulder, her eyes fierce. "You've got this, Jenna." Sam, stationed in the back with a live feed ready to stream to his news outlet, gave me a nod. This was it. No turning back. The moderator opened the floor for questions. I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the polished wood, and took the microphone. The spotlight burned, but my voice was steady. "Mr. Prescott," I said, locking eyes with my father. He stood on the stage, his smile frozen, a king in his moment of glory. "You speak of integrity. I wonder if you could comment on the specific techniques used to verify the provenance of the Lamplight Sonata, a key piece in your foundation's collection." The room stilled. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. I signaled Sam, and my presentation flashed onto the massive screens behind him. Infrared images of the forged painting, the hidden signature, financial records linking the foundation to Adrian Thorne's shell corporations, a map of their criminal enterprise laid bare in cold, undeniable detail. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I kept talking, my voice cutting through the rising murmurs. "The Prescott Foundation has built its legacy on fraud," I said. "They've buried authentic works under forgeries, donated fakes for tax write-offs, and sold masterpieces on the black market. This is the truth behind their philanthropy." Chaos erupted. Adrian Thorne bolted for the exit, his face pale, but federal agents were already waiting, their badges glinting. Bea stormed the stage, her heels clicking furiously, trying to unplug the projector. "This is a lie," she shouted, but her voice cracked, her composure shattering. Theo sat in the front row, head in his hands, unmoving, a statue of defeat. My father stood frozen, his legacy crumbling under the glare of 100 phone cameras, their flashes like gunfire. I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I let the evidence speak, each slide a hammer blow. The audience was a mix of shock and outrage, some whispering, others filming, the truth spreading faster than I could have dreamed. I'd done it, not with rage, but with facts, cold and sharp as a blade. The Prescotts were finished, and I was free. The fallout was a storm. Headlines screamed about the Prescott scandal, the foundation's name dragged through the mud. Social media exploded, clips of my presentation going viral, the art world reeling from the betrayal. I didn't read the articles, didn't watch the news. I'd said my piece, and the truth was out. That was enough. I returned to Philadelphia, my loft quiet, the easel empty. The feds had questioned me for hours, probing my involvement, but Evelyn's connections and Sam's airtight reporting kept me clear. I wasn't a hero, they said, but I wasn't a criminal either, just a woman who'd done what she had to. I was exhausted, my bones heavy, my heart raw. The victory felt bittersweet, like biting into fruit that was half rotten. A month later, a package arrived, unmarked, left at my door. Inside was a small painting, an authentic work by a minor artist my mother had loved. Vibrant, unpretentious, the kind of art my father would have called worthless. Tucked behind the canvas was a note in Theo's handwriting. She would have been so proud. "I'm sorry." I traced the words, my throat tight. It was the first real apology I'd ever gotten, a crack in the wall between us. I didn't forgive him, not yet. But I kept the painting, hanging it where the morning light could touch it. I thought about my mother sometimes, her quiet love for art, the way she'd hum while sketching in her garden. She died when I was young, before the Prescott machine had fully hardened. Maybe she'd seen me, the real me, even if no one else had. The thought was a small, warm thing, like a candle in the dark. I didn't go back to restoration right away. I needed something else, something mine. One morning, I dragged a large, blank canvas from storage and set it on the easel. The loft was silent, the city waking outside my windows, the air sharp with possibility. I dipped a brush in paint, cobalt blue, bold and alive, and made the first stroke. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, a mark that belonged to me. I painted for hours, days, losing myself in the rhythm of it. The canvas became a map of everything, my anger, my grief, my hope. I wasn't proving anything to my family anymore. I wasn't fighting their ghosts. I was creating for the first time, without their shadows in the way. the story doesn't end with me triumphant, or reconciled, or whole. It ends with me in my studio, the light streaming in, my hands stained with paint. I'm not a forgery, not a failure. I'm an original, still in progress, and that's enough. The canvas is wide open, and I've only just begun. In the end, my story wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my canvas. For years, I was a character in my family's gilded narrative. The outcast. Breaking free meant walking away from their story to start writing my own. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave the stage, pick up a blank canvas, and create a life that is unapologetically yours. Stroke by painful, beautiful stroke, your life is your greatest masterpiece. Don't let anyone else hold the brush. What's one thing you'll do this week to paint your own story?